The sun had barely crested the eastern ridgeline when Tessa Lancaster drove her father's plow into the hardened Colorado earth. Sweat already beading along her temples, despite the morning chill that lingered over Breckenridge in the summer of 1873. Her hands, calloused and strong, gripped the worn wooden handles with a determination that spoke of years spent working the unforgiving land her father had claimed after the mining rush had brought them west. She was 22 now, and every year since she was old enough to lift a hoe, she had worked this farm alongside her father until his heart gave out the previous winter, leaving her alone with 60 acres and a stubborn will to prove she could make it on her own. The mining town of Breckenridge had transformed from a gold seeker's paradise into something more permanent, though many still clung to dreams of striking it rich in the surrounding mountains. Tessa had no such dreams. Her wealth was in the soil, in the potatoes and turnips that grew despite the altitude, in the chickens that laid eggs she could trade at the general store. She wore her father's old work shirts, sleeves rolled to her elbows, and her auburn hair tied back with a strip of leather. Dirt caked beneath her fingernails, ground so deep that no amount of scrubbing could fully remove it, and she wore it like a badge of honor. The sound of hoofbeats on the road made her look up from her work. 3 riders approached, and she recognized them immediately. The Dalton brothers, ranch hands who worked for one of the larger spreads north of town. They had been making increasingly frequent trips past her property, and their attention made her skin crawl in a way that had nothing to do with the morning cold. "Morning, Miss Lancaster," called the eldest, Wade Dalton, as they reined their horses near her fence line. His smile never reached his eyes. "That is mighty hard work for a woman alone." Tessa straightened but kept her hands on the plow. "I manage just fine." "That is what we have been discussing," Wade continued, dismounting and walking closer. His brothers followed suit. "A woman alone on a spread like this, it is not right. Not safe. You should consider selling, maybe find yourself a husband to take care of you proper." "My land is not for sale, and I do not need taking care of." Tessa's voice remained steady, though her heart had begun to pound. She was alone out here, the nearest neighbor half a mile down the valley road. Wade's smile faded. "Now, Miss Lancaster, you are being unreasonable. This land would be better suited to cattle than these struggling vegetables. We are prepared to make you a fair offer." I said no. The middle brother, Clyde, spat tobacco juice onto her freshly turned earth. "Stubborn woman, you cannot work this land alone. You will fail come winter, mark my words." Tessa released the plow and reached for the rifle she kept leaning against the fence post nearby. She did not aim it, just held it across her body. "I believe I have made myself clear, gentlemen. I will thank you to move along." The tension stretched taut as a bowstring. Wade's hand moved toward his own weapon, and Tessa's breath caught in her throat, but then a voice rumbled from the tree line that bordered her northern property. The lady said, "Move along." All heads turned. A man emerged from the pines, leading a massive bay horse. He was the largest man Tessa had ever seen, easily 6.5 feet tall with shoulders broad as an ox yoke. His dark hair hung past his collar, and a thick beard covered his jaw. He wore buckskins and fur, and even at a distance, Tessa could see the ropes of muscle in his arms and the way he moved with the easy confidence of a predator. A long rifle rested in the crook of his arm, and a knife the size of a small sword hung from his belt. "This is not your concern, friend," Wade said, his hand still hovering near his pistol. The stranger stopped at the fence line, and Tessa noticed his eyes were a startling gray, like storm clouds over the peaks. When 3 men corner a woman alone, it becomes everyone's concern. "Now I will say it once more. Move along." Something in his tone made it clear he would not say it a third time. Wade must have heard it too, because after a long moment he remounted his horse. "This is not over, Miss Lancaster. You will come around to seeing sense." The Dalton brothers rode off at a canter, leaving dust swirling in their wake. Tessa found herself alone with this mountain giant, and she realized she was still holding her rifle. She lowered it slowly. "I am grateful for your timing, mister, but I had the situation handled." The corner of his mouth lifted beneath his beard. "I do not doubt it. You have the look of someone who can handle themselves. Finn O'Callahan." He touched 2 fingers to his forehead in a casual salute. "Tessa Lancaster." She studied him more carefully now. His clothes marked him as a man who lived in the high country, a trapper or hunter. "Are you passing through?" "Was planning to. I brought furs down to trade, but the prices in town are not worth the journey. Thought I might try Denver, but my horse threw a shoe yesterday. The blacksmith says he is backed up 2 days." Finn gestured to the bay. "I saw your place from the ridge trail and thought I would cut through your land to reach the main road. I apologize for trespassing." Tessa looked at the sun climbing higher, then at the quarter-acre she still had left to plow. She looked at this stranger who had sent the Dalton brothers packing with nothing but his presence and a few words. An idea formed, reckless perhaps, but she had learned to trust her instincts about people. "You need a place to wait out those 2 days. I need help getting my fields ready for planting. My father passed last winter, and I am behind on the work. You help me finish the heavy labor, and you can camp on my property. Use my well, and I will feed you proper meals. Home cooking beats whatever jerky you are carrying." Finn tilted his head, considering. "You are offering work to a complete stranger. You are a stranger who could have ridden past when those men were making trouble. Instead, you stepped in. That tells me something about your character. Besides," she allowed herself a small smile, "I am a good judge of whether a man means harm. You do not." "You are right about that. I have no quarrel with honest folk." He looked at her fields, at the plow waiting in the half-turned earth, at the sturdy cabin that sat beneath a stand of aspens. "And I confess, I am weary of my own cooking. You have yourself a deal, Miss Lancaster. Call me Tessa. If we are going to be working together, no need for formalities. Tessa." The way he said her name, in that deep rumble of a voice, made something flutter unexpectedly in her chest. "Where should I stable my horse?" She directed him to the small barn behind the cabin, and by the time he returned, she had taken up her position at the plow. He approached with his rifle stored and his sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with old scars. "Let me take that," he said, reaching for the plow handles. Tessa hesitated. She had grown accustomed to doing everything herself, to proving she needed no one. But practical sense won out. What would have taken her 3 more hours might take him 1, and there was so much other work waiting. She stepped aside. Finn gripped the handles and started forward, and the plow cut through the earth like butter. Tessa watched in amazement as he made a single pass in half the time it would have taken her, his powerful frame making the back-breaking work look effortless. The muscles in his back and shoulders flexed beneath his shirt with each step, and she found herself staring before she caught herself and turned away, her cheeks flushing. "Where is your seed stored?" she called out. "In the cellar beneath the cabin. I will get the rest of the tools ready." She spent the next hour preparing while Finn finished the plowing. When she returned with bags of seed potatoes, he had not only completed the field but had already begun marking rows with a string line and stakes. "You have done farm work before," she observed. "Grew up on a homestead in Missouri. Left when I was 18 to trap in the high country. That was 7 years ago, but you do not forget the basics." He straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "This elevation makes the work harder. I do not know how you manage it alone." "Stubbornness mostly." Tessa handed him a canteen of water. That and no other choice. They worked side by side through the morning, planting seed potatoes in neat rows. Finn worked with the steady efficiency of someone accustomed to hard physical labor, but he did not try to take over or tell her how to do her own work. Instead, he followed her lead, asked questions about her preferred spacing and depth, and matched his pace to hers. It was a partnership, and Tessa found herself relaxing in a way she had not since her father died. At midday, she called a halt and led him to the cabin. It was simple but well built, with a stone fireplace that her father had constructed with careful pride. She had a pot of bean soup simmering over the fire, and she ladled generous portions into wooden bowls along with thick slices of bread she had baked the day before. Finn ate with the focused intensity of a man who had skipped breakfast, and Tessa found herself smiling at his obvious appreciation. "This is the finest meal I have had in 6 months," he said between bites. "You are a good cook. My mother taught me before she passed when I was young." Cooking is easier than farming, though. The bread does not fight back when you need it. That earned her a deep chuckle that seemed to rumble up from his chest. "I suppose that is true, though I have met some sourdough starters that were ornery enough to qualify." They fell into easy conversation. Tessa learned that Finn spent most of his time alone in a cabin he had built high in the mountains west of Breckenridge, trapping beaver and marten and living off the land. He came to town only twice a year to trade his furs and stock up on the few supplies he could not make or hunt himself. He had no family left. His parents and younger sister lost to fever years ago. In turn, she told him about her father, a failed prospector who had found his real fortune in farming, about the struggle to prove herself to the townspeople, who thought a woman had no business running a farm alone, about her determination to make this land thrive. "Those men who were here this morning," Finn said as they prepared to return to work. "They will come back, I know." Tessa's jaw set. "Wade Dalton has wanted this land since before my father died. He has been pressuring me for months." "What does the law say?" "Sheriff Williams is a decent man, but he cannot be everywhere. And the Daltons have not done anything illegal yet, just made offers and veiled threats. There is not much the law can do until they cross a line." Finn was quiet for a moment. 2 days might not be enough time to finish everything you need done." Tessa looked at him sharply. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that Denver can wait. I could stay longer, help you get fully prepared for the growing season. You could pay me in meals and a place to sleep. I would be nearby if the Daltons return. You would do that. Give up trapping season. The season does not truly begin for another month. And besides," he met her eyes, "I find I enjoy the company. Being alone in the mountains is peaceful, but it gets lonely. Good conversation and honest work are worth more than a few extra pelts." Tessa felt warmth spread through her chest, something she had not felt in a very long time. "Then I accept," gratefully. Over the next week, Finn proved himself invaluable. He repaired the barn roof that had been leaking, reinforced the fences that she had been struggling to maintain alone, and helped her plant the rest of her fields. He chopped enough firewood to last her into next winter and dug a new drainage ditch to keep spring snowmelt from flooding her lower pasture. In the evenings, they sat on the porch of her cabin and talked while the sun set behind the peaks, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Tessa found herself looking forward to those evenings more than she wanted to admit. Finn was different from any man she had known. He listened when she spoke, truly listened, and he treated her opinions with respect. He never questioned her knowledge of her own land or tried to override her decisions. When she said she wanted to try rotating her crops differently this year, he helped her plan it out. When she mentioned wanting to expand her chicken coop, He spent 2 days building her a new one twice the size of the old. But more than his helpfulness, she found herself drawn to his quiet strength, his gentle humor, and the way he seemed completely comfortable in his own skin. He did not boast or posture. He simply was, solid and dependable as the mountains themselves. One evening, as they sat watching the stars emerge, Tessa worked up the courage to ask something that had been on her mind. "Why did you leave your homestead? You said you were 18. Finn was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, "After my family died, there was nothing holding me there but ghosts and memories. The land felt empty without them. I needed something different, someplace where everything did not remind me of what I lost. So I sold the farm, bought supplies, and headed into the mountains. I thought I wanted complete solitude. And did you, for a time. It helped, being alone with just the sky and the trees. But solitude and loneliness are not the same thing, and somewhere along the way, one turned into the other." He glanced at her. "Being here, working alongside someone, sharing meals and conversation, it reminds me what I have been missing." Tessa's heart beat faster. "And what is that? Connection. Purpose beyond mere survival. The feeling that someone would notice if you did not come home at night." His gray eyes held hers. "The company of someone who knows honest labor and is not afraid of it. Is that how you see me?" "She is the farmer's girl with dirt under her nails," Finn said softly, and Tessa realized he was not just stating a fact but saying something deeper. "She knows honest labor. She does not shy away from hard work or difficult challenges. She faces them head-on with courage and determination. That is rare and worth admiring." Tessa felt heat rise to her cheeks, and she was grateful for the darkness that hid her blush. "You make me sound like some kind of hero." "I am just doing what needs to be done." That is what makes it heroic, doing what needs to be done day after day without complaint or expectation of glory. Most people cannot manage that. They sat in comfortable silence after that, but something had shifted between them, an acknowledgement hanging in the air like the scent of pine on the breeze. The next morning, Sheriff Williams rode up while they were mending the fence line along the road. He was a weathered man in his 50s with a salt and pepper mustache and keen eyes that missed little. "Morning, Tessa." "Finn." He nodded to them both. "Wanted to stop by and let you know the Daltons have been making noise in town about your refusal to sell. Wade is telling anyone who will listen that you are being unreasonable and that the land will go to waste under a woman's care." Tessa felt anger flash through her. "Let him talk. My crops will speak louder than his words come harvest." "I agree, but I wanted you aware. Also wanted to make sure everything was all right out here. Heard the Daltons paid you a visit last week." "They did, but Finn helped me make my position clear." Williams studied Finn with the assessing gaze of a lawman. "O'Callahan, is it? You are the trapper who lives up near the timberline." "That is right. Good man to have around." Williams shifted in his saddle. "Tessa, I cannot camp on your doorstep much as I would like to help, but if the Daltons escalate beyond words, you send for me immediately." "Understood, understood. Thank you, Sheriff." After Williams rode off, Tessa drove the post-hole digger into the ground with more force than necessary. "I hate that I need protecting. I hate that they think I am weak because I am a woman." "They do not think you are weak," Finn said, lifting a new fence post into place. "They think you are vulnerable, which is different, and they are wrong about that too, but they will not realize it until you prove it to them." "How am I supposed to prove it?" "By succeeding. By making this farm thrive. By being here next year and the year after that, undeniable and unshakable." He tamped dirt around the post base. "And by not being alone." Tessa looked at him. "What do you mean?" "The Daltons saw you as an easy target because you were by yourself. Now you are not. That changes their calculations. You cannot stay here forever just to be my protection. Maybe not forever, Finn met her eyes, but maybe longer than either of us originally planned. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Tessa opened her mouth to respond, but the sound of approaching riders cut her off. The Daltons, all three of them with Wade in the lead. "Miss Lancaster," Wade called out, reining in his horse. His eyes narrowed when he saw Finn. "You are still here, mountain man." "Finn O'Callahan," Finn said, straightening to his full impressive height. "And yes, I am still here. This is between me and the lady." "Then speak your piece and move on," Tessa said, stepping forward. "But make it quick. We have work to do." Wade's jaw clenched. "I am making you one final offer, Miss Lancaster. $3,000 for your land, buildings included. That is more than fair for a struggling farm." "This farm is not struggling, and it is not for sale. I will not say it again. You are making a mistake. A woman alone cannot hold land like this. Nature itself will drive you out if stubbornness does not kill you first." "She is not alone," Finn said quietly, but his voice carried a weight that made even the horses shift nervously. "And you are trespassing. The lady has answered you 3 times now. That is twice more than necessary." Clyde, the middle brother, spat. "You think one mountain man makes a difference? You cannot watch her every minute. Try me." The threat in those 2 words was unmistakable. Wade's hand moved toward his pistol and Tessa's heart lurched, but Finn did not even flinch. He simply stood there, utterly still, his eyes locked on Wade with the patient intensity of a wolf watching prey. After a moment that stretched like taffy, Wade lowered his hand. "This land will be mine one way or another. Mark my words, Miss Lancaster." They rode off, and Tessa realized she had been holding her breath. She released it in a shaky exhale. "That was a threat," she said. "Clear as day, it was." Finn's expression was grim. "We should ride to town and tell Williams." "And say what?" That Wade spoke words that could mean anything. "The sheriff cannot arrest a man for implications." Then we prepare for them to make good on those words. Over the next few days, Finn set about turning Tessa's property into something more defensible. He cut shooting lanes through the brush that crowded too close to the cabin, installed shutters on the windows that could be barred from inside, and made sure every entrance had a clear line of sight. He taught Tessa how to shoot more accurately with her rifle, spending hours with her at a makeshift range he set up in a small clearing. "You are not bad," he said after watching her put 3 shots in a tight group on a target. "But you are thinking too much. Trust your instincts. Feel where the shot should go." He moved behind her, adjusting her stance slightly, his hands warm on her shoulders. Tessa's breath caught at his nearness, at the solid strength of him just inches away. She could smell pine and leather and something uniquely him. "Now," he said, his voice low near her ear. "Breathe out slowly and squeeze." She followed his instruction, and the shot rang true, dead center of the target. She lowered the rifle, turning slightly to find his face very close to hers. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Tessa could see flecks of blue in his gray eyes, could count the individual hairs in his beard. "That was perfect," Finn said, but he was not looking at the target. He was looking at her. "Finn, She did not know how to finish that sentence, did not know how to put words to the tangle of feelings inside her. He stepped back, creating distance, and Tessa felt the loss of his warmth like a physical thing. "You are a quick learner. Practice that every day, and you will be more than capable of defending yourself." They walked back to the cabin in silence, but Tessa's mind raced. Something was growing between them, something that felt inevitable and terrifying in equal measure. She had been alone for so long, had built walls around her heart to protect herself from the pain of loss. But Finn was dismantling those walls without even trying, simply by being himself, by seeing her truly and not looking away. That night, a storm rolled down from the peaks, bringing sheets of rain and wind that howled around the cabin. Tessa sat by the fire, mending a torn work shirt while Finn carved a piece of wood at the table. He had moved his bedroll into the barn when he first arrived, insisting it would not be proper to sleep in the cabin, but the intensity of the storm had convinced Tessa to insist he come inside. "The barn leaks in weather like this," she had told him, "and I trust you. Please, there is no sense in you being miserable when there is a perfectly good floor in front of the fireplace." Now he sat across from her, and the domesticity of the scene struck Tessa with unexpected force. This is what life could be like, she thought. Sharing a home with someone, comfortable in each other's presence, each doing their own work but together in the doing of it. "What are you making?" she asked, nodding at the wood in his hands. "A latch for your chicken coop. The old one is starting to fail. Foxes are clever and I do not want them getting in. You are always thinking of things I have not even noticed need fixing. Extra eyes help," he smiled at her, "and I pay attention to what matters. What matters, keeping you safe, keeping this place running smoothly. Making sure you succeed." He set down his carving. "Tessa, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever think about doing anything else, going somewhere else? You are young yet, and this is hard, isolated life." Tessa considered the question carefully. "I thought about it after my father died. For about a week, I considered selling and moving to Denver or even back east. I could have become a seamstress or a teacher or married some shopkeeper. But this land, it is in my blood now. My father loved it and I love it. Leaving would feel like betraying him and myself. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. A person's land is part of who they are, especially when they have worked it and bled for it." He paused. "But it does get lonely, does it not?" "Yes," she admitted quietly. "Very lonely sometimes. I talk to the chickens more than I care to admit." Finn laughed, that deep rumbling sound she had come to cherish. "I talk to my horse, so I understand completely. But chickens, at least they might talk back. They do, in their way, though their advice is usually just demands for more feed." The storm rattled the shutters, and a particularly strong gust sent rain hammering against the roof. Tessa set aside her mending and stood, moving to the window to peer out through a crack in the shutters. "Cannot see anything," she murmured. "Just darkness and rain." Finn joined her at the window, his presence a solid warmth beside her. Good weather for anyone with ill intentions to move around unseen. "Do you think the Daltons would try something tonight?" "Hard to say. The storm would cover their approach, but it also makes doing anything difficult. Still, I will keep watch. You need sleep too, Finn." "I will doze light. Old trapper habit. Any sound out of place and I will wake." Tessa turned to look at him, craning her neck to meet his eyes in the firelight. "Why are you doing all this? You could have moved on to Denver weeks ago. Why stay and risk getting caught up in my troubles?" Finn was quiet for a long moment, his gaze intense. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Because for the first time in 7 years, I do not feel alone. Because working this land with you feels right in a way nothing has since I left Missouri. Because when I think about riding back into those mountains by myself, the thought sits in my chest like a stone." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Because I look at you, covered in dirt and sweat and working yourself to exhaustion, and I think you are the finest thing I have ever seen." Tessa's heart thundered in her chest. "Finn, you do not have to say anything. I know I am just a rough mountain man, and you probably have dreams of someone more refined, someone who could give you an easier life." "You think I want easy?" Tessa felt a spark of indignation. "You think I want some soft-handed man who would look at my calluses with disgust? I want someone who understands what this life means, who respects hard work and honest labor, someone who sees me as a partner, not property to be managed." She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart beat strong and steady beneath her palm. "I want someone exactly like you." The last word had barely left her lips when Finn cupped her face in his large, calloused hands and kissed her. It was gentle at first, questioning, but when Tessa pressed closer and kissed him back, gentle gave way to something deeper, something that had been building between them since that first morning in her field. His arms came around her, and she felt surrounded by his strength, protected and cherished in a way that made her throat tight with emotion. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Finn rested his forehead against hers. "I am not a man of pretty words," he said. "But I am falling in love with you, Tessa Lancaster. Have been since I watched you face down those Dalton brothers with nothing but a rifle and your own courage." "Then we have something in common," she replied, her voice trembling with the weight of the admission. "Because I have been falling for you too. Somewhere between the fence mending and the shooting lessons and the quiet evenings on the porch, you make me feel less alone in the world. You will never be alone again if I have anything to say about it." They kissed again, and Tessa felt something settle deep in her soul, a rightness she had not known she was missing. When they finally parted, the storm still raged outside, but inside the cabin, everything felt warm and safe and perfect. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the storm having scrubbed the sky clean. Tessa woke early as always, but this time she woke with a smile, memories of the previous night filling her with warmth. Finn was already up, had rekindled the fire and put coffee on to boil. He turned when she emerged from her small bedroom, and the smile that lit his face made her heart skip. "Morning," he said. "Morning." She felt suddenly shy, uncertain of how to act now that everything had changed between them. But Finn simply opened his arms and she walked into them, letting herself be held against his broad chest. "Do you regret last night?" he asked quietly. "Not even a little bit. Do you?" "My only regret is that I did not kiss you sooner." They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, until the smell of coffee boiling over forced them apart with a laugh. As they worked together to prepare breakfast, Tessa felt a contentment she had not experienced since before her father died. This was what she wanted, this partnership, this easy companionship laced with new love and old respect. They spent the day working on repairing a section of irrigation ditch that had been damaged by the storm's runoff. It was muddy, exhausting work, and by afternoon they were both covered head to toe in muck. Tessa looked at Finn, at the mud splattered across his face and tangled in his beard, and started laughing. "What?" he asked, grinning. "You look like you wrestled a pig and lost. Have you seen yourself?" He scooped up a handful of mud and held it threateningly. "Because you are no better. You would not dare." His grin widened. "Would I not?" Tessa shrieked and ran, but Finn was faster despite his size. He caught her around the waist, and they tumbled into a relatively clean patch of grass, laughing like children. He braced himself above her, careful not to crush her with his weight, and Tessa looked up at him, at the joy in his eyes, and felt her heart swell impossibly larger. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now. "I love you, Finn O'Callahan, and I love you, Tessa Lancaster." He kissed her gently, mud and all. They finished the ditch repair and returned to the cabin to clean up. Tessa heated water for washing, and they took turns scrubbing away the day's grime. As evening fell, they sat on the porch as had become their habit, but now Tessa sat tucked against Finn's side, his arm around her shoulders. "What happens when your horse's shoe is fixed?" she asked quietly. "Will you go to Denver?" "My horse's shoe has been fixed for a week," Finn admitted. I paid the blacksmith to tell anyone who asked that he was backed up. Tessa sat up to look at him. You lied about needing to stay. I told a small untruth to buy myself time. I knew even then that I did not want to leave, but I needed an excuse to stay that would not seem too forward. By the time the shoe was actually fixed, I was already finding other reasons to remain. And now I stay because I want to, because you want me to, because this feels like home in a way nowhere else has since I lost my family. He turned to face her fully. Tessa, I know this is fast, and I know we have only known each other a month, but I am not a man who does anything halfway. I want to stay, not just for the summer but for good. I want to help you run this farm. I want to build a life here with you. What about your trapping? I can trap in the winter when farm work is slow, or I can give it up entirely. The furs paid for my supplies when I had nothing else, but I do not need them now. What I need is right here. Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. People will talk. An unmarried man living on my property. Then marry me. The words came out bold and sure. I have no ring to offer you and no fortune to my name. All I have is a strong back, a willingness to work, and a heart that beats for you. But if that is enough, then marry me, Tessa. Let me stand beside you not just as a hired hand or a friend, but as your husband and partner in all things. That is everything, Tessa said, her voice breaking with emotion. That is more than enough. Yes, Finn. Yes, I will marry you. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and when they finally parted, both had tears on their cheeks. I am not sure this is real, Tessa admitted. A month ago I was alone and struggling, and now I have you, and my farm is thriving, and everything feels almost too good to be true. It is real. I will prove it to you every day for the rest of our lives. They decided to marry quickly, with just Sheriff Williams and a few neighbors as witnesses at the small church in Breckenridge. Tessa wore her best dress, a simple blue cotton that had been her mother's, and Finn cleaned up remarkably well, his beard trimmed and his hair tied back, wearing new clothes purchased from the general store. When he saw her walking toward him down the short aisle, his eyes lit with such love and admiration that Tessa felt beautiful despite the calluses on her hands and the sun-weathered tone of her skin. The ceremony was brief, but heartfelt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Finn kissed her with enough enthusiasm to make Sheriff Williams chuckle and the other witnesses applaud. Afterward, they shared a simple meal at the boarding house where Tessa had purchased a small wedding cake as her one indulgence. To the happy couple, Sheriff Williams toasted with his coffee cup. May your love be as strong as your work ethic and your land as prosperous as your partnership. They rode back to the farm in the late afternoon, and Tessa felt a giddy happiness bubbling up inside her. She was married. She had a husband, a partner, someone to share the burden and the joy of this life she had built. That night, as they lay together in the bed that had once seemed too large and empty, Finn held her close and whispered promises against her hair. Promises to protect her, to work beside her, to love her through whatever challenges came their way. And Tessa made her own promises in return, to trust him, to build a life together, to face the future as a team. We should probably expect trouble from the Daltons, Finn said quietly in the darkness. Wade will not take kindly to you marrying. It makes you even less vulnerable. Let him come. We will face it together. Together, Finn agreed and sealed the word with a kiss. For 2 blissful weeks, the Daltons stayed away, and Finn and Tessa settled into married life with surprising ease. They worked the farm during the day, and in the evenings they planned for the future. Finn wanted to expand the vegetable operation and perhaps add a few head of cattle. Tessa thought they should invest in better irrigation and maybe repair the old root cellar. They debated and discussed and ultimately decided together true partners in every sense. The first real test came on a hot August afternoon. Tessa was in the kitchen preserving vegetables when Finn, who had been repairing the barn door, came in moving fast. Riders approaching. 6 of them, including the Daltons. Tessa wiped her hands on her apron and retrieved her rifle from beside the door. Finn grabbed his own weapon, and together they stepped out onto the porch. Sure enough, 6 riders approached at an easy canter. Wade Dalton led them, with his brothers flanking him and 3 men Tessa recognized as ranch hands from their spread. They reined in at a distance, and Wade's face was dark with anger. "Heard you got married, Miss Lancaster, or should I say Mrs. O'Callahan now?" "That is right," Tessa said, keeping her voice steady. "Finn and I married 2 weeks ago. How convenient." A woman alone suddenly finds herself a husband right when she needs protection. Wade's sneer was ugly. Makes a man wonder if this marriage is legal or just a convenient arrangement. "You can wonder all you like," Finn said, his tone dangerous, "but you will do it from somewhere else. This is private property and you are not welcome here. I have made generous offers for this land. Offers any reasonable person would accept. But you," Wade pointed at Tessa, "you are too stubborn and too stupid to know what is good for you." "The only stupid thing I see is 6 armed men harassing a woman and her husband on their own property," a new voice called out. Sheriff Williams rode into view from the tree line, and Tessa realized with a surge of relief that Finn must have sent word to him somehow. Wade's expression went carefully neutral. "Just having a conversation, Sheriff." Did not look like a conversation from where I was sitting, looked like intimidation. Williams dismounted slowly, his hand resting casually on his pistol. "Now, I have been tolerant of your persistence, Wade, but my patience has limits. This land is not for sale. The lady has made that clear repeatedly. If you continue to harass the O'Callahans, I will have cause to arrest you for trespassing and threatening behavior." "We have not made any threats." "You brought 6 armed men to a farm occupied by 2 people. That is threat enough." Williams's expression hardened. "Go home, Wade, and do not come back unless you are invited. That goes for all of you." For a moment, Tessa thought Wade might refuse. His hand moved toward his weapon, and she saw Finn tense beside her, ready to act. But then one of the ranch hands, an older man with gray in his hair, spoke up. "Boss, this is not worth it. Let us go." Wade glared at the ranch hand but finally jerked his horse's head around. "This is not over." "Yes," Sheriff Williams said flatly, "it is. If I hear you have bothered these people again, I will come for you, and that is a promise." The 6 riders left at a gallop, leaving dust hanging in the air. Williams turned to Finn and Tessa with a tired smile. "Sorry it took me so long to get here. Your message found me on the other side of town." Tessa looked at Finn. "You sent for the sheriff this morning. I had a feeling Wade would make a move soon, so I sent word asking Williams to patrol by today, just a precaution." "A good one," Williams said. "I think that exchange was enough to keep Wade quiet for a while. He knows I am watching him now, and he would not risk his ranch over this property. But stay vigilant. Angry men do stupid things." After Williams left, Tessa leaned against Finn, suddenly exhausted. "Will it always be like this? Looking over our shoulders, waiting for trouble? No. Wade will either give up or he will do something stupid and end up in jail. Either way, this will pass." Finn kissed the top of her head. "And we will still be here, still working this land, still together. That is what matters." August faded into September, and the farm flourished under their joint care. The vegetables grew fat and healthy, and Tessa's preserves filled the pantry. Finn built additions to the barn and repaired every fence until the property was in the best condition it had been in years. They worked from dawn until dusk, but the labor felt lighter shared between them. The Daltons stayed away, though Tessa occasionally saw them watching from a distance when she went to town for supplies. She ignored them, focusing instead on the life she and Finn were building. One evening in late September, as the aspens turned gold and the air took on an autumn chill, Tessa realized her monthly courses were late. She said nothing at first, not wanting to raise hopes prematurely, but when another week passed and still nothing came, she could not keep the news to herself any longer. "Finn," she said one night as they prepared for bed, "I think I might be pregnant." He froze in the act of pulling off his boots. "Are you certain?" "Not completely, but all the signs are there. My courses are late, I have been feeling queasy in the mornings, and I am exhausted even when I should not be." Finn crossed to her in 2 long strides and pulled her into a fierce embrace. "A baby, we are going to have a baby. If I am right, yes, are you happy about it?" "Happy." He pulled back to look at her, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Tessa, I am overwhelmed, thrilled, terrified. All of it at once. We are going to be parents. I know it is fast. We have only been married a few months. It is perfect timing. The farm is in good shape, we have supplies put by for winter, and I cannot think of anyone I would rather raise a child with." He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "A baby, our baby." Tessa covered his hand with her own, and together they stood there, feeling the weight and wonder of this new development. She had thought the loneliness of the past year was behind her, but she had not realized how much more full her life could become. A husband, a thriving farm, and now a baby on the way. It felt like an embarrassment of riches. The next morning, she rode to town to see the doctor, an elderly man named Dr. Morrison who had delivered half the babies in Breckenridge. He confirmed what she already knew. She was approximately 6 weeks along, and if all went well, she would deliver in late spring. "You are healthy and strong," Dr. Morrison told her. "Farm women make excellent mothers. They understand hard work and are not afraid of a challenge. But you must take care of yourself. No heavy lifting in the later months, and make sure you are eating enough for 2. Tessa promised to follow his advice, and as she left his office, she nearly collided with Wade Dalton on the boardwalk. "Mrs. O'Callahan," he said, his tone mocking. "How is married life treating you? Well enough. Excuse me." She tried to move past him, but he sidestepped to block her path. "Heard you seeing the doctor. Not ill, I hope?" "That is none of your concern." Tessa kept her voice level despite the anger rising in her chest. "Now move, or I will call for the sheriff." Wade leaned closer, and she could smell whiskey on his breath despite the early hour. "You think you have won because you found yourself a mountain man to hide behind. But winter is coming, Mrs. O'Callahan. Long, hard winter. Let us see how you and your husband fare when the snow is 10 feet deep and the temperature drops below 0. Let us see if you are still so stubborn come spring. Is that a threat? It is a prediction. That land has broken better men than your husband. It will break him too, and when it does, I will be there to pick up the pieces." "Wade Dalton," Sheriff Williams's voice cut through the tension. He strode down the boardwalk, his expression thunderous. "Are you bothering Mrs. O'Callahan?" "Just having a friendly conversation, Sheriff." "Did not look friendly. Move along, Wade, and stay away from the O'Callahan property. I meant what I said before." Wade tipped his hat mockingly at Tessa and sauntered away. Williams watched him go, then turned to Tessa. "Are you all right?" "I am fine. He was just talking, trying to intimidate me." She paused. "Sheriff, he made comments about the winter, about our land breaking Finn." "Do you think he would try something when the weather gets bad?" Williams's expression was grave. "I think Wade is bitter and drunk more often than not these days. His ranch is not doing well, and he has fixated on your property as the solution to all his problems." "I would not put it past him to try something stupid." He hesitated. But Tessa, he is right about one thing: winter up here is brutal. You and Finn are both strong, but if you have never experienced a Colorado mountain winter, it can be deadly. Make sure you are prepared. We will be. Thank you, Sheriff. She rode home and told Finn about the encounter. His jaw tightened as she spoke, and she saw anger flash in his gray eyes. He approached you in town, in broad daylight. Williams ran him off quickly. But Finn, he talked about winter as though he knows something we do not. What if he tries to sabotage our supplies or our buildings when the snow comes? Then we prepare for that possibility. We will check and double-check everything. We will store extra supplies in multiple locations in case something happens to the barn or root cellar. We will be ready for anything he might try. Finn pulled her close. And Tessa, I have survived 7 winters in the high mountains alone. I know what cold and snow can do. I will not let anything happen to you or our baby. Our baby, she repeated, letting herself smile despite the worry. That will take some getting used to saying. We have 7 months to practice. They spent the next month preparing for winter with even more intensity than before. Finn checked every inch of the cabin roof, reinforcing it to handle heavy snow loads. He sealed every crack and gap in the walls, installed a second stove in the back room for extra heat, and built a covered walkway connecting the cabin to the barn so they could tend the animals without fighting through blizzards. Tessa preserved every vegetable she could, filling jars with pickles and relishes and tomato sauce. She smoked meat, stored potatoes in the root cellar, and made sure they had enough flour, sugar, salt, and coffee to last until spring. She also sewed warmer clothes for both of them, double-layered shirts and pants lined with fur that Finn had saved from his trapping days. By the time the first snow fell in mid-October, they were as ready as they could be. The farm looked secure, the pantry was full, and the animals were snug in their insulated barn. Tessa stood at the window watching the fat flakes drift down, and Finn came to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Beautiful," he murmured, "and dangerous. Both can be true. But we are ready. Whatever winter or Wade Dalton throws at us, we will face it together." The snow continued through the night and into the next day, laying down half a foot of white blanket over everything. When it finally stopped, Tessa and Finn bundled up and went out to check on everything. The animals were fine, the buildings were holding up well, and the sight of their farm in its winter coating was undeniably lovely. "It is like a Christmas card," Tessa said, her breath puffing white in the cold air. "Wait until we have 10 feet of it and cannot get to town for weeks at a time. Then it loses some of its charm." But Finn was smiling as he said it, and Tessa realized he was happy. Truly happy in a way she had not seen before. He belonged here in this harsh, beautiful place, and he thrived on the challenge of it. The winter settled in hard and fast after that first storm. By November, the snow was waist-deep, and the temperature rarely climbed above freezing. Tessa's pregnancy progressed, and she began to show, her belly rounding beneath her layers of warm clothing. Finn became even more protective, insisting she rest more and work less, and while part of her chafed at the restrictions, she recognized the love behind them and acquiesced. They spent long evenings by the fire, Finn carving small wooden animals that would become toys for their child, Tessa sewing tiny clothes and blankets. They talked about names and wondered whether they would have a boy or a girl. Finn hoped for a boy first, someone to help work the farm as he grew. But Tessa secretly wished for a girl, a daughter she could teach the same lessons her mother had taught her. In late November, a blizzard struck with a ferocity that shocked even Finn. The wind howled like a living thing, and the snow fell so thick that Tessa could not see the barn from the cabin windows. They huddled inside, feeding the stoves constantly to keep the temperature bearable, and waited it out. On the second day of the storm, Tessa woke to the sound of splintering wood. She sat up in bed, heart pounding, and saw Finn already pulling on his boots. "What was that?" she asked. "Something breaking. Stay here." He grabbed his rifle and went to the door, cracking it open against the force of the wind. Snow swirled into the cabin, and Tessa saw him struggle to push outside. She waited, clutching a blanket around herself, until he returned 10 minutes later covered in snow and ice. Part of the barn roof collapsed under the snow load. "The animals are all right, but we have a hole letting the weather in. I have to repair it now or they will freeze. You cannot go out in this. It is suicide." "I do not have a choice, Tessa. The chickens and the horse will die if I do not fix it." "Then I am coming to help." "No, absolutely not. You are pregnant. And you are one man trying to repair a roof in a blizzard. You need someone to hold boards in place to hand you tools. I can do that much." She was already pulling on her warmest clothes. "Do not argue with me, Finn O'Callahan. Those animals are as much mine as yours." He looked like he wanted to forbid it, but he must have seen the determination in her eyes because he finally nodded. "Stay close to me. If you start to feel too cold or dizzy, you go straight back inside. Understood?" "Understood." They ventured out into the maelstrom together, and Tessa quickly understood why Finn had been worried. The cold was vicious, cutting through her layers as though they were paper, and the wind threatened to knock her off her feet with every gust. They reached the barn and found a section of roof sagging inward, snow piling through the gap onto the floor below. Working together, with Tessa holding boards in place while Finn hammered them down, they managed to create a temporary patch. It was not pretty, but it would hold until the storm passed and they could make proper repairs. By the time they stumbled back to the cabin, both were shaking with cold and exhaustion. Finn built up the fire until it roared, and they stripped off their wet outer layers, huddling together under blankets while feeling returned to their extremities in painful prickles. "I am sorry," Finn said once he could speak without his teeth chattering. "I should not have let you come out there. You could not have done it alone. And I am fine, the baby is fine. We are tougher than you think." "I know you are tough. That is what terrifies me." "You will push yourself too hard and I will lose you." His arms tightened around her. "I cannot lose you, Tessa. You and this baby, you are everything. You will not lose us. We are here, we are safe, and we are together. That is all that matters." The blizzard finally blew itself out on the third day, and when they ventured outside, they found a world transformed. Snow had drifted against the cabin walls up to the windows, and the path to the barn was completely buried. It took them most of the day to dig out and assess the damage. Besides the barn roof, they had lost part of the chicken coop fence, and several trees had come down in the high winds. But the worst discovery came when Finn went to check their main supply of firewood. The tarp covering the woodpile had torn away in the storm, and half their winter supply was now buried in snow and ice. "We can dry it out," Tessa said, trying to sound optimistic. "Some of it. But wet wood does not burn well, and we needed every cord to make it through to spring." Finn's expression was grim. "We will have to ration what we have and supplement by cutting more from the forest. In this weather, we do not have a choice. But not today. Today we rest and repair what we can." That night, as they lay in bed listening to the wind still gusting outside, Tessa found herself wondering if Wade had somehow caused the damage to their wood supply. Had someone snuck out during the storm and torn away the tarp? But no, that was paranoia talking. No one would risk their life in a blizzard just to sabotage a woodpile. It had been an accident, bad luck, nothing more still. The worry nagged at her through the following days as Finn spent hours in the bitter cold cutting and hauling new firewood. She helped as much as she could, but her growing belly made the work awkward, and Finn refused to let her do anything too strenuous. She felt useless, reduced to watching her husband work himself to exhaustion while she stayed warm inside. December arrived, and with it came a brief warming spell that melted some of the snow and made getting around easier. Finn took advantage of the weather to make a trip to town for additional supplies. Tessa wanted to go with him, but he insisted she stay home and rest. "I will only be gone a few hours. Rest, keep warm, and I will be back before dark." She watched him ride away and then set about putting the cabin in order and preparing a hot meal for his return. She was rolling out dough for biscuits when she heard horses outside. Thinking Finn had returned early, she went to the door and froze. Wade Dalton stood on her porch with his brother Clyde. Both wore heavy coats against the cold and both looked grim. "Mrs. O'Callahan," Wade said, "I was hoping to catch you alone." Tessa's hand moved to the rifle she kept by the door. "My husband will be back any moment." "No, he will not. I saw him heading into town an hour ago, which means we have plenty of time to talk." "I have nothing to say to you. Leave my property." Wade pushed the door open before she could close it, and Tessa stumbled back, reaching for the rifle. But Clyde was faster, kicking it away from her grasp. Terror lanced through her, sharp and cold. "Do not touch me. The sheriff warned you. The sheriff is not here. And by the time anyone figures out what happened, you will have decided to sell after all." Wade pulled out a rolled paper and a pen. "This is a deed transfer. You are going to sign your property over to me." "I will never sign that." "You will if you want to live." "Sign it, take the money I am offering, and leave. Go to Denver, go back east, I do not care. But this land is mine, and I am done waiting for you to see reason." Tessa backed toward the fireplace, her mind racing. She was pregnant, alone, and facing two armed men. If she screamed, no one would hear. If she fought, she would lose. But she would not give up her land, would not betray everything she and Finn had built. "No," she said firmly. "You will have to kill me first." "That can be arranged," Clyde said, pulling his pistol. "Sign the paper, Mrs. O'Callahan." "Put the weapon down, Clyde." "Right now." Finn's voice came from the doorway, low and deadly. He stood there with his rifle aimed directly at Wade's head. "And you, Wade, step away from my wife." Wade turned, and Tessa saw genuine fear flash across his face. Finn looked like an avenging angel, his eyes cold as winter, his expression promising violence. "Your timing is inconvenient, O'Callahan." Wade tried to sound brave, but his voice shook. "I imagine it is. I came back early because I ran into Sheriff Williams in town. He is about 10 minutes behind me, coming to arrest you, Wade. Turns out one of your ranch hands grew a conscience and reported that you have been planning this for weeks. Breaking into occupied homes and forcing deed transfers at gunpoint is a hanging offense. You are lying. Am I? Why do you not wait and find out?" Finn took a step forward. "But first, you are going to apologize to my wife for terrorizing her. Then you are going to drop your weapons. And then you are going to wait very quietly for the sheriff to arrive." Clyde looked at Wade, uncertainty written across his face. "Boss, do as he says," Wade muttered. Both men dropped their pistols and raised their hands. Tessa released a shaky breath and moved to Finn's side. He kept his rifle trained on the Daltons but wrapped his free arm around her waist, steadying her. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly. "No, scared but not hurt." They stood there in tense silence until the sound of more horses announced the sheriff's arrival. Williams came through the door with 2 deputies, all 3 men armed and ready. "Wade Dalton, Clyde Dalton. You are under arrest for attempted robbery, breaking and entering, and assault with a deadly weapon. Boys, take them in." As the deputies cuffed the Dalton brothers and led them away, Wade looked back at Tessa with pure hatred in his eyes. "This is not over." "Yes," Sheriff Williams said firmly. "It is. You will hang for this, Wade. Even if you do not, you will spend the next 20 years in territorial prison. Either way, you are done." After everyone left, Tessa collapsed into a chair, shaking with delayed reaction. Finn knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "I am so sorry. I should never have left you alone. You could not have known he would try this today." "But Finn, how did you know to come back? You said you met Williams in town." "I did, and he told me about the ranch hand who came forward, but something felt wrong. I had this feeling in my gut that I needed to get back here immediately. So I left the supplies at the store and rode home as fast as I could." He pressed his forehead to her knees. "When I saw their horses outside and realized you were alone with them, I thought my heart would stop. I was so scared, not just for me, but for the baby. If something happened to me, you would lose both of us. But nothing did happen. You are safe, the baby is safe, and the Daltons are going to prison. It is over, Tessa. We can finally stop looking over our shoulders." True to Sheriff Williams's word, Wade and Clyde Dalton were tried and convicted. Wade was sentenced to hang for his crimes, while Clyde, who had been following his brother's lead, received 20 years in prison. The third Dalton brother, who had not participated in the final assault, sold the family ranch and left Colorado entirely, washing his hands of the whole affair. The townspeople of Breckenridge rallied around Tessa and Finn after the trial, bringing food and supplies to help them through the rest of the winter. Many apologized for not taking Tessa more seriously when she first complained about Wade's harassment, and several farmers offered to help with spring planting if Finn needed an extra hand. Winter continued its harsh grip through January and February, but inside the cabin, Tessa and Finn created a warm sanctuary. Her belly grew rounder, and Finn spent hours with his hand resting on it, feeling their child kick and move. They talked about the future, about expanding the farm, about the children they would raise and the life they would build. "I want at least 3, Tessa said one evening as they sat by the fire. "Children, I mean. I always hated being an only child after my mother died. I want our children to have siblings, to have each other. 3 sounds good, though after seeing how much being pregnant takes out of you, I might want to space them out a bit." Finn smiled at her. "You are beautiful like this, you know, glowing. I feel like a barrel with legs." "A beautiful barrel." He kissed her gently. "I cannot wait to meet this little one, to hold our child and start the next chapter of our lives. It will be here before we know it. Dr. Morrison says late April or early May, spring, new life coming as the snow melts and the land wakes up." That seems fitting. March brought the first signs of approaching spring. The days grew longer, the snow began to melt, and Tessa could see patches of brown earth emerging in the sunny spots around the cabin. She was huge now, her back aching constantly, and she waddled more than walked. But she had never been happier. In mid-April, 2 weeks before her due date, Tessa woke in the middle of the night to a sharp pain in her back. She tried to ignore it and go back to sleep, but the pain came again 20 minutes later, wrapping around her belly. Labor. She was in labor. "Finn," she shook her husband awake. "It is time." He sat bolt upright, instantly alert. "Time, are you sure? The pain started an hour ago. They are getting stronger and closer together." Finn leaped out of bed and began pulling on clothes with shaking hands. "I will ride for Dr. Morrison." "It is the middle of the night. By the time you get to town and back, I might have already delivered." "Then what do I do?" Despite the pain, Tessa smiled at the panic in his voice. "You help me. You have delivered foals and calves. A baby is not so different. A baby is completely different. This is our baby, and you, and I am terrified. We will figure it out together. Help me out of bed." The next hours were a blur of pain and effort. Finn proved himself capable despite his fear, heating water, bringing clean linens, supporting her as she paced through contractions. He held her hand and let her squeeze until she thought she might break his fingers. He wiped sweat from her face and told her she was strong and beautiful and doing wonderfully, even when she cursed him for getting her pregnant in the first place. Dawn was breaking when she finally felt the overwhelming urge to push. Finn positioned himself to catch the baby, and Tessa bore down with all her strength. Once, twice, 3 times she pushed, and then suddenly there was a cry, thin and indignant, and Finn was holding a tiny, squirming infant. "A boy," he said, his voice choked with tears. "Tessa, we have a son." He placed the baby on her chest, and Tessa looked down at the small red face, the tiny fists waving in the air, and felt her heart expand impossibly larger. This was her son. Their son. The perfect product of their love and partnership. "Hello, little one," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Welcome to the world." Finn climbed onto the bed beside them, wrapping his arms around both mother and child. "He is perfect. Absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" They had debated names for months but had never quite decided. Now, looking at their son in the golden light of dawn, Tessa knew. "James, after my father. James O'Callahan." "James," Finn repeated, trying it out. "I like it. James it is, Doctor." Morrison arrived an hour later, having been fetched by a neighbor who had seen lights burning in the cabin at odd hours. He examined both Tessa and the baby and pronounced them healthy and strong. "You did well for a first-time mother," he told Tessa. "And you," he clapped Finn on the shoulder, "are a brave man to have delivered your own son." "I did not feel brave. I felt terrified. Bravery and fear often go hand in hand. The important thing is you both came through it." Over the next weeks, Tessa and Finn adjusted to life as parents. James was a good baby, fussy only when hungry or tired, and he seemed to thrive on the quiet routine of the farm. Tessa recovered quickly, her strong body bouncing back from childbirth faster than she expected, and soon she was back to light work around the farm while Finn handled the heavier tasks. Spring exploded across their land in a riot of color. The aspens leafed out in brilliant green, wildflowers carpeted the meadows, and the fields Finn had prepared waited for planting. They worked together as they always had, but now one of them always had James nearby in a cradle Finn had built, watching over their son as they worked. One evening in late May, as the sun set behind the peaks and painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, Tessa stood at the edge of her field holding James and watching Finn finish the last of the planting. Her husband straightened, stretching his back, and caught her watching. He smiled and walked over, wrapping one arm around her waist and looking down at their sleeping son. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I am thinking about how much has changed in a year. Last spring I was alone, struggling and terrified I would lose everything. Now I have you and James, and the farm is thriving, and I feel like the richest woman in the world." "We are rich," Finn agreed. "Not in gold or fancy possessions, but in things that matter. Love, partnership, family, good land beneath our feet." He kissed her temple. "I never thought I would find this after I lost my family. I thought I was meant to be alone. But then I met a stubborn farmer's girl with dirt under her nails who knew honest labor and was not afraid of hard work, and she changed everything. You changed everything for me too. You gave me partnership when I thought I had to do it all alone. You gave me love when I thought I was too tough and too independent to need it. You gave me this," she looked down at James, "a family of my own." They stood there as the light faded, 3 people bound together by love and hard work and the good earth beneath them. The future stretched out before them, full of challenges and rewards, seasons of plenty and seasons of struggle, but they would face it all together. As if reading her thoughts, Finn said, "Whatever comes, we will handle it. Together." Together, Tessa agreed and sealed it with a kiss. The years that followed proved both challenging and rewarding. James grew into a sturdy toddler with his father's gray eyes and his mother's determination. He followed Finn around the farm like a shadow, insisting on helping with every task, even when his help consisted mainly of getting underfoot. Tessa watched her husband teach their son about planting and animals and the rhythms of farm life, and her heart swelled with love for both of them. When James was 2, Tessa became pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because she knew what to expect, and in the spring of 1877 she delivered a healthy daughter they named Sarah after Finn's mother. Sarah had dark hair like her father and a stubborn chin that marked her as Tessa's child, and from the moment she drew breath, she had the entire family wrapped around her tiny fingers. The farm prospered under their joint stewardship. Finn's strength and knowledge of mountain living combined with Tessa's farming expertise created a partnership that yielded more than either could have achieved alone. They expanded their vegetable operation, added a small herd of dairy cows, and began selling eggs and produce in town. Money was never plentiful, but it was enough, and they lacked for nothing important. The townspeople of Breckenridge grew to respect the O'Callahans as solid, hard-working citizens. Finn's quiet competence and Tessa's fierce independence became legendary, and more than one young couple looked to them as an example of what a true partnership should be. They were asked to stand as godparents for several children in town, and Finn was even offered a position as deputy sheriff, though he declined, preferring to stay on the farm with his family. When Sarah was 3 and James was 5, Tessa became pregnant once more. This time she delivered twins, 2 boys they named Michael and Thomas. The cabin suddenly felt much smaller with 4 children running through it, and Finn spent that summer building an addition, 2 new bedrooms and a larger kitchen. "Our family is complete now," Tessa declared as she nursed the twins while keeping an eye on Sarah and James playing outside. 4 children is plenty." Finn looked at his brood, his expression soft with love. "Our cup runneth over." "I could not have imagined this life when I was alone in the mountains, but I would not trade it for anything. Not even for the peace and quiet," Tessa teased. "Especially not for that. Peace and quiet are overrated. Give me chaos and laughter and tiny hands pulling on my beard any day." As if on cue, James ran in followed by Sarah, both demanding their father's attention for some urgent childhood crisis involving a frog and a bucket. Finn scooped them both up, one in each arm, and headed outside to adjudicate while Tessa sat with the sleeping twins and smiled. The children grew and the seasons turned. James became old enough to be a real help on the farm, taking on chores and responsibilities with the same determined focus his mother brought to her work. Sarah proved to have a gift with animals, gentle hands that could calm a nervous horse or coax a broody hen from her nest. The twins were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and getting into mischief that neither would have attempted alone. Through it all, Tessa and Finn remained partners in every sense of the word. They still worked the farm together, though now their tasks were divided more by practicality than necessity. They still sat on the porch in the evenings after the children were asleep, talking about the day's events and planning for tomorrow. And they still loved each other with the same fierce intensity that had sparked that first summer, deepened now by years of shared joy and struggle. One evening, as they celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary with a rare dinner alone in town while a neighbor watched the children, Finn reached across the table and took Tessa's hands. "You remember when we met? You were plowing that field, covered in sweat and dirt, and you looked at me like you would shoot me if I caused trouble. I remember thinking you were the biggest man I had ever seen and wondering if you were going to be a problem or a solution." Tessa smiled. "I am glad you turned out to be a solution. I am glad you took a chance on a rough mountain man who did not know what he was looking for until he found it. What did you find? Home, purpose, love, everything that matters." His gray eyes, only slightly creased now with laugh lines, held hers with the same intensity they had that first morning. "I love you, Tessa O'Callahan. I loved you when you were the stubborn farmer's girl with dirt under her nails, and I love you now as my wife and the mother of my children. I will love you for the rest of my days." Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you too, Finn. You gave me everything I needed and things I did not even know I wanted. You gave me partnership and protection and a love deeper than I imagined possible. You see me, truly see me, and you love me not despite my independence and stubbornness, but because of them. That is easy. Those are your best qualities." They returned home that night to find all 4 children still awake despite the neighbors' best efforts, demanding stories and bedtime rituals. But neither Tessa nor Finn minded. This was their life, chaotic and demanding and absolutely perfect. The years continued their steady march. The children grew and thrived, each developing their own personality and dreams. James talked of expanding the farm, of buying adjacent land and raising cattle on a larger scale. Sarah wanted to start breeding horses, having discovered a passion for the animals. The twins were still young enough that their dreams changed daily, but they showed signs of their father's love for the wild places, always wandering off into the woods on adventures that gave their mother gray hairs. Tessa herself began to show the signs of a life spent in hard work and mountain weather. Her hands were as calloused as ever, her face weathered by sun and wind, but she wore her age with pride. These lines and calluses were badges of honor, proof that she had worked the land she loved and built something lasting. Finn aged like a mountain, solid and enduring. His hair began to silver at the temples, and his beard showed more gray than brown. But he remained as strong as ever, capable of full days of heavy labor that would exhaust men half his age. He moved a bit slower on cold mornings, and sometimes his old injuries from his trapping days ached, but he never complained. One summer day, when James was 15 and helping his father repair the barn roof, the boy asked a question that had clearly been on his mind. "Pa, do you ever regret leaving the mountains, giving up trapping to be a farmer?" Finn paused in his hammering and looked out over the land that had become his home. The fields were green with growing crops, the animals grazed contentedly in their pastures, and through the cabin window he could see Tessa teaching Sarah how to bake bread while the twins played at their feet. "Not for a single moment," he said finally. "Trapping was a way to survive, but this," he gestured at the farm, at the family visible through the window, "this is a way to live. There is a difference." "What difference?" "Surviving is about getting through each day. Living is about building something that matters, creating a legacy that will last beyond your own life. You children, this farm, the life your mother and I built together, that is living. That is what matters." James nodded slowly, absorbing his father's words. "I want that someday. What you and Ma have. Then find yourself a partner who challenges you, who meets you as an equal and is not afraid of hard work. Someone who makes you better just by being near them. Do not settle for anything less, son. True partnership is the foundation everything else is built on." That conversation stayed with Finn as he watched his children grow into young adults. He and Tessa had given them roots and wings, taught them the value of honest labor and the importance of integrity. Whatever paths they chose, they would walk them with strength and character. More years passed. James did expand the farm, buying 50 acres adjacent to their original land and starting a small cattle operation. He married a schoolteacher from town, a smart woman named Rebecca who understood the demands of farm life and threw herself into it with enthusiasm that reminded Tessa of herself at that age. Sarah did start breeding horses, developing a reputation for quality animals that brought buyers from as far away as Denver. She married one of those buyers, a rancher's son from the eastern plains, and they split their time between both properties, bridging the mountains and prairie. The twins left home at 18 to explore the wider world, but they promised to return, and Finn and Tessa believed them. The mountains got into your blood, and once they were there, you always came home. On a bright autumn day in 1894, Tessa and Finn sat on their porch watching the aspens turn gold as they had so many times before. They were both in their 60s now, slowing down but still active, still working their land though they had help from James and his growing family. "We did it," Tessa said quietly. "Did what? Everything we set out to do. We kept the farm, raised good children, built a life worth living. We succeeded." Finn reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining with the easy familiarity of decades. "We did more than succeed. We thrived. Against the odds, against people who said it was impossible, we made this work. Do you remember what you said about me that first day? She is the farmer's girl with dirt under her nails. She knows honest labor. I remember. It is still true. You have dirt under your nails even now." He smiled at her. "That is one of the many reasons I love you. I love you too. I always will." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Two people who had built something lasting through love and partnership and honest labor. The farm that had almost broken Tessa when she was alone had instead become the foundation for a legacy that would last generations, all because a mountain man had stepped out of the trees one morning and decided to stay. And in the end, that was the best story either of them could have asked for. As the years advanced into the late 1890s, Tessa and Finn gradually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the farm, allowing James and Rebecca to take over the main work. But they remained vital parts of the operation, offering wisdom gained from decades of experience and pitching in whenever they were needed. Finn still chopped wood and tended the animals, and Tessa still maintained her garden and helped Rebecca with the preserving and cooking. Their grandchildren adored them. James and Rebecca had 3 children of their own, and they spent countless hours listening to Finn's stories of his trapping days and learning farming techniques from Tessa. Sarah brought her children to visit every summer, and the farm rang with laughter and activity during those precious weeks. The twins eventually returned as promised. Michael became a lawyer in Denver but maintained a cabin on the property and visited frequently. Thomas chose to stay permanently, building his own house on the land. James had purchased and starting a timber operation that supplied lumber to Breckenridge's continued growth. The farm that had started as 60 struggling acres had grown into a thriving multi-generational operation that supported 3 families directly and employed several townspeople besides. The O'Callahan name became synonymous with quality and integrity in Summit County, and people spoke of Tessa and Finn with respect bordering on reverence. But despite their success and comfortable old age, Finn and Tessa never forgot where they started. They remained humble, never putting on airs or acting as though they were better than anyone else. They helped neighbors in need, donated to the church and school, and treated everyone with the same respect regardless of social standing. One winter evening, when Tessa was 68 and Finn was 75, they sat by their fire as they had for over 3 decades of marriage. The cabin was quiet, just the two of them, and Finn held Tessa's hand as they watched the flames dance. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Completely. Are you?" "More than I ever thought possible. When I left my homestead all those years ago, I thought I was running away from pain. I did not realize I was running toward everything I would ever need. We found each other at exactly the right time. I needed you, and you needed me." "I still need you," Finn said softly. "Every day. You are still the farmer's girl with dirt under her nails, still the strongest woman I have ever known." Tessa leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him that had been her anchor for so many years. "And you are still my mountain man, my protector, my partner in all things. I cannot imagine my life without you. You will never have to. We are bound together now and always." They passed away within months of each other in the early 1900s, Finn first in his sleep one winter night, peacefully and without pain. Tessa followed him that spring, and their children said she simply decided she was done being without him. It was a story of love and partnership, of two people who found exactly what they needed in each other, and built something lasting through hard work and unwavering devotion. It was a story of the Wild West at its finest, where determination and integrity mattered more than money or social standing, where honest labor was the currency that counted most. And on quiet evenings, when the wind whispered through the aspens and the sun set behind the peaks, those who knew the story swore they could still see two figures on the old cabin porch, sitting side by side, hand in hand, watching over the land they loved and the legacy they had built together. A mountain man and a farmer's girl who had found in each other everything worth having, and who had proved that true partnership could overcome any obstacle and build something beautiful that would last long after they were gone.